Howdy, everybody, and welcome back to the Established Facts. How are you? I hope you're doing well. I've got a couple friends with me here. We're going to talk about some fun stuff. I guess since it's just the three of us, let's just go ahead and get into our introductions. I'm going to go ahead and start on my right.
What's up, guys? It's Peercy. Good to see y'all again.
This is Josh.
And, of course, I am your host, Big Don. As you can see, it's just the three of us. We're just hanging out, chatting a little bit about some fun gaming-related stuff and kind of the whole new world, if you will. The whole new world of gaming.
I love that song.
Right, I do too. So what I wanted us to talk about, and not to say that this has to be the only thing that we're going to talk about, but I feel like the main crux of the subject matter that I want to chat about really is kind of the aftermath of what we experienced back in January. So to give some reference, if you are just getting into the RPG hobbies because of the influx of new players and new content and stuff like that, welcome. You are definitely welcome, and you're welcome at our table anytime. But in January, or like late December, early January, Hasbro had released a few different press releases and some audio of like shareholder meetings that were public. One thing I will say is I do appreciate a company that is willing to kind of open the doors to the consumer to hear. I think that the biggest issue that they ran into, though, is mainly the content of the conversation.
Yeah, they didn't think very long about what they were talking about when they opened that door.
Yeah.
And to your credit, good idea. Open the door.
Yeah.
More companies should do things like that so the public knows what they're doing, unless, of course, they have defense contracts, and I totally understand.
Right.
But on that flip side, like, what are you talking about? And does it harm
exactly
who you're selling to?
Yeah, your main demographic.
Yeah, and like if that's the case, then I won't say don't do that, but like I don't know, maybe don't do things that harm your main demographic.
Well, and I think that if you have an understanding of how the conversation's going to go, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? But the problem is you're not having a conversation.
No.
That's the biggest thing. It's like when you open the doors to what could be talked about, but you're the one driving the conversation, well, then it's really just a single agenda, right? It's what you want to convey.
Certainly.
So without getting too far into the detail, and I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to, I think it was our dumpster fire episode, I think is what we titled it, in January, like January 12th time. Definitely go back and check it out. We give a lot more detail on some of the different things that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro were planning on doing with their open game licensing, with some of the things and some of the changes that they were doing with like mainly Dungeons and Dragons, but then also like their Magic the Gathering brand and a couple of different things like that. But what we want to talk about today is in the light of Hasbro coming out and basically admitting in their video that their whale, which that's kind of a sales term on the people who spend the most money that you want to target, is Dungeon Masters, right?
No.
Right, exactly. Like we haven't known that.
No
for
way.
years. Dungeon Masters are buying and consuming most of the material, and then they are then sharing that with their players. As a player, you might buy a player's handbook. You might even buy a monster manual. Typically, if you're a sole player, you're probably not going to buy a Dungeon Master guide. You're probably not really going to buy a campaign setting unless what you're shooting for is like some added flavor to a character or a new character race or class build.
Yeah.
Something like that. But by and large, your Dungeon Master is going to have a lot of those supplies for you.
And we're talking specifically in the D&D sphere here, right? Because that was the conversation what it's based around.
Exactly. And so the way that conversation and really just the narrative that was being told to us was that their goals were to engage and increase revenue through like pay-to-play style, subscription style things, so that they could beef up the numbers of player investment while also continuing to carry through the numbers of Dungeon Master investment, and how that was going to spread across whether it be campaign settings or all these little fun things. They kind of do a little bit of it with like D&D Beyond if you are into like buying the dice and like transactional role play devices like that, stuff like that. So since then, a lot of people with their OGL. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. The one thing, the OGL thing is important
Yeah.
that they really talked about, and that was, and just a brief overview, was getting rid of the original OGL and putting in a new one that was horrible for everyone.
Yeah.
So any creators in the space, now they could just make money off of them, which, fine, they want to make money, they're a business, but you didn't have, potentially up to the point of you owed like hundreds of thousands of dollars to them, you had to pay them that, or you didn't control your creative...
Your own intellectual property.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the main issue in their discussion of we can control everything. You know, like when supervillains get when they think they're almighty and powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So since then, we have seen a huge uptick in smaller role-play game companies being able to, being able to find success. Even larger companies, publishing companies like Paizo, who produce like the Pathfinder and Starfinder branded RP games, I read a report. I wish I could remember. I think it was in April. That they had run out of like core rulebook material and things like that, like physical copies in stores. They were behind.
So in January, almost February, when all this was happening, they'd ran entirely out of their warehouse stock.
Yes.
Which in turn meant that the local game stores lost stock. And it took until April to get the next printing.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Which, as we'll get into later, is also the last printing of the current core rulebook rule set for Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Right. Which, and I will say, as somebody who is a huge fan of what Paizo produces and the audience that they keep and the statements that they made after a lot of the OGL stuff came out and how they basically were like, look, we're not really changing anything about our OGL. We want to encourage people to check out these third parties, which in my opinion, I feel like Paizo has done a fantastic job since their first edition.
Oh, yeah.
In being able to really cultivate an open game license environment and relationship with people who are self-publishing or something like that. Like, they're very good about, even if it's not a Paizo branded publishing, they're very good at, like, if you get on the Paizo shop and stuff like that, you'll find third-party material there on their shop that you can purchase, which I think is incredibly encouraging to new developers and new designers and new authors and artists and things like that. They've always done a great job of cultivating that relationship. And so for them to also come out and just really draw that line in the sand to say, no, we are still backing our OGL authors and material the same way we always have. And I think that really encouraged a lot of people to go, well, I mean, even if WotC and even if Wizards of the Coast and even if Hasbro decide that they're gonna back up a little bit, which they definitely did.
Oh yeah,
they definitely recoiled a bit based on
a little more than a bit, but
yeah. Well, I think what was so telling was just exactly that. You had these stores that for a long time, they're expecting, oh, I know, what my stock is going to look like. I know what my players are going to look like. To all of a sudden, it's like, no, we're out of stock. And we're not going to get it back until April. And I think it's really encouraging that even though it sounds like, it may sound like, Paizo is just taking advantage of the marketplace being much more wide open, so they're going to come out with a new edition. They're not changing from second edition. They're kind of just cleaning up a few things and revising a lot of what they do. And nothing about the game really is going to change. It's just kind of the environment and the culture of what Pathfinder is and what Starfinder is that's kind of going to change. So
for those of you who hadn't heard, Pathfinder 2nd edition is getting what they're calling a remaster, which I believe the player core is coming out in November or October, and the GM core and the bestiary core are coming out in November, I believe.
So perfect for holiday season.
Right. And the general plan is that they're removing anything that currently exists under the Wizards of the Coast open game license, and they are modifying the rule set such to make them stand more on their own. So for many fans of Pathfinder First Edition, you're aware that it grew up in the roots of Dungeons and Dragons version 3.5. Many called it version 3.75. And what Second Edition did after being 10 years on the market as First Edition was they took a different approach. They wanted to make themselves separate. However, because they still adopted the open game license, they had access to some of the monsters and spells and terminologies that Wizards and Dungeons and Dragons have put out there. And what the remaster project is supposed to do is remove those links and put all of Pathfinder under their new ORC license, the Open Role Playing Creativity license or something like that.
ORC.
The ORC, that's right.
Which is great. That's a great.
Yeah.
The ORC, which people like Kobold Press, which is one of the largest third-party publishers for D&D, are also going to be under. They are going to be under the OGL and the ORC to protect themselves from both sides.
Which is great.
Yes. So there's a lot that we'll get into more about what's been discussed so far. I can't say anything officially because I don't work for Paizo per se.
Yeah.
But I can say what they have said thus far.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of fun to speculate what this new gaming environment is going to look like and what sort of content we're going to actually be able to consume, and how many doors we'll be able to close. And
I love my son.
I'm just kidding.
Well, no, but closing doors is true. Like that's the thing, you know. The guys at Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro really have to think about what they did and what they're going to do. Because even the major streamers, you know, they're switching platforms. They're coming up with their own editions. They're coming up with their own games to not just to thumb their nose, but for their own security.
Yeah.
Because Wizards made it plain and obvious that we're after you.
Right.
We don't support you.
Right. Yeah, and even if they have kind of feigned an element of support, when it comes down to it, you know, it's really about what can we get from you.
Right.
It's at least, even if that's not, you know, and again, this is not to be targeted at every individual employee at Hasbro.
Oh, 100%.
The corporate image that a lot of these larger production companies for gaming in general, because it's not, you know, this sort of mentality is not something that only exists in the realm of roleplay games.
No, not at all. But there are definitely people there at Wizards.
Yeah.
That I will target this at.
Sure.
I think his name is Cox.
Yeah, is he the CEO?
Yeah, I'm glad I don't know him that well. His name that well. That means he's not that important.
That's right.
To me.
That's right.
But the point is, like, bad form, buddy. You and the like 3 people under you that are trying to run that train in the ground. Bad form.
Yeah, and you know that's kind of what I'm interested to find out from you guys. What are some of the things outside? You know, maybe not outside, but maybe within the realm of that initial aftermath, or over the last 6 months. What are some things that you have seen, either as an individual or just kind of like in the role play game world or universe that is, you know, because there's a million of them out there. There's tons of different rule sets and game sets and stuff like that. But what have you guys seen as far as, you know, upticks, downticks that you've been observant to within like the role play game environment?
I can tell you, as we've already discussed, that Pathfinder and even Starfinder saw a significant bump in sales and an additional interest in their product. So much so that they had to finally kind of pull forward the remaster project. And because it sounds like they've been discussing it for a while anyways to make themselves stand alone. The other one that I want to bring up, which at time of recording, as I mentioned earlier, Kobold Press, their Kickstarter for the Tales of the Valiant, which is their
Yep.
role-playing system, is at $100,000 goal at $779,000 with 25 days to
grief.
go. So
Good.
I
They're
mean
gonna
that's
hit that.
that's right
yeah.
now. And I've even thought about that. And there have been a few Kickstarter campaigns that I like. Swords and Wizardry, which is I think a system that was many years old, got a republished just to get people interested.
Yeah.
And I backed it on Kickstarter to get PDF copies because I'm like, I want to see these guys succeed. Whether I ever end up playing this, which by the way, we all run into that. We have the black hole of role playing systems over there.
Yeah.
The stuff we just never
Yeah.
play.
Hey man, I still play Pathfinder First Edition, so whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just for me, it's like the highest form of classic great, but to each their own, you know.
Right.
And there's a bunch of new stuff coming out, and I think there's some really cool. I think this whole thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Josh, but I think this whole thing really did something actually kind of good for the gaming industry. Is like you got a lot of you got Kobold Press and Paizo and other well-known companies coming out with newer editions or updates to their current editions that kind of move away from what was before into really new territory. And then you have groups like Critical Role making new games or working with other people to make 2 new games. One of them's like a murder mystery. It's not really a fantasy setting. It's like a
Well, yeah.
Cthulhu-esque, not Cthulhu though.
Yeah.
It's sort of
It's called Illuminated World.
yeah.
I think it's what it's called. It's a D6 system. It's designed by the same designers, Off Guard Games, and it uses like a 2D6 system. It's very kind of it reminds me a lot of Fate, like that sort of like open rules light, more interpretive storytelling, and more role play heavy, which I really love. And I think it definitely caters to kind of like that like it almost reminds me a little bit of like Call of Cthulhu feel.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does.
Like it gives you a lot more opportunity for like narrative and like character build and RP versus being like a more like crunchy, mechanic heavy, combat heavy sort of system. Like Pathfinder can be, like Dungeons and Dragons can be. Like they're built for combat mechanics.
Right.
And then they add
They're
that
simulators.
Yeah, exactly. They add that great element of RP to it, but this is more of like an RP heavy game. And off-world not off-world, off-guard games. They I actually was just telling Jason and Josh, I was actually at a local game store not long ago, and there was a game that a couple people were sitting at the table playing called Band of Blades. And I'd never heard of it, and then it was just so funny that when I was looking up information about Illuminated Worlds, that it's the same designer that created it. And obviously, I don't think that everything is going to be the same from one system to the other, because I feel like Critical Role is really trying to market this as a really fun, really cool, like rules light RP, because they've got other things going down the line, which is really cool. But like. Well, even with your guys, even with
Accidental Cyclops and
absolutely.
We did a Faith No More based role playing game for the band, and that went really well on Kickstarter. So we're doing more. We're going to be at Gen Con this year, with LARPs and tabletops based on that system, and that's based on Powered by the Apocalypse. But we kind of took that and did our own thing with it, and through that, we're working with other people in different systems, making fantasy settings or making post-apocalyptic, wild settings with people. So a lot of stuff is coming out from not just us, but guys like Storytellers Forge, and they just got done with the Kickstarter for the Black Ballad, which, that was a 5.0 based system,
right.
But they also have rules to be, if you want to include it in other systems, here's how you do it. And it's not just, it's kind of
almost conversion rules.
Right. So a lot of people are going rules agnostic because of this, and more focusing on the story and the setting as opposed to what are the mechanics. And that can be good or bad, right? But the idea that you can take something and put it into any mechanical system that you'd like, because the story is there and the setting is there and the characters are fleshed out and they feel good.
Yeah.
And they give you the tools as a GM to do what you need to do with story.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Well, and I think part of the reason that the OGL was originally developed was that we've developed all this creative content, and we would love for you to develop stories within this world. So here is your access and your legal rights to go and do so. And when the process changed that you have the rights to use those, but we have the rights to make money off whatever you make, that's when it shifted to another direction. So when you see a Monty Cook Games or a Paizo come out with their own licenses, they are trying to go back to the roots of, we enjoy this content and we enjoy what you create within our content. So here's how you can do it and know you're going to be protected. And that is what is so amazing about some of the new stuff that's coming out, is they are getting involved with these new licenses or finding ways to take advantage of even the license that now Wizards has promoted by moving the open game license into Creative Commons, and somehow making it possible for Strahd to meet the Mordenkainen somehow.
They're both from Greyhawk.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
it obviously not expected in any way, shape, or form to happen, but now could because of the way they rewrote the license. But whatever, I think that in all of the dumpster fire that this was, there has been enough creative explosion to come out of it, including from the D&D side of things, because I'm not a fan of D&D whatsoever, but I have seen what they're planning and the reintroduction of older villains to give people the opportunity to play these now. Boy, they got a fire lit under them, whether we like it or not. And some stuff is, I even saw, technologically speaking, their new virtual tabletop looks incredible if they actually pull off what they're showing. But that's just one thing, because you also have Nexus, which is coming out with some of the new character creation stuff from Paizo. There's another company with virtual tabletops that are coming out, because somebody said that the only way you're going to be able to play D&D is if you use our virtual tabletop. So somebody's like, well, then I'll just write a virtual tabletop that's under an open source license, and we'll use whatever you want, whether you like it or not.
Good job trying to corner the market, guys, because there are other creative people out there that are gonna, I don't know. I just want to see him fail.
I mean, it really comes down to necessity is the mother of all invention.
100%.
Right? Like if I'm a gamer and I want to play with my friends who live in Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky, and we can't get together here in Indianapolis to sit down and play a Dungeons and Dragons game, well, we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like we're going to do Skype, or we're going to do Discord, or we're going to do both. Josh and I play in a game. It's a Dungeons and Dragons game. It's a Dragonlance game. But we play in a Dragonlance game, and our friend Bill runs it, and we just get on Zoom. And we're on Zoom for a couple of hours, and we use Discord for our dice rolls because we've created a little bot in that. And other than that, we're just playing. Like, it doesn't... I think it's so crazy that we live in an environment, and don't take any offense to this, Josh, but we live in an environment where people feel like they have to have every bell and whistle to have a good role-playing experience.
Oh, yeah,
and I know that you're not like that, but I also know that you and Deb really love, like, a lot of the fun, like, extra stuff. And that's, like, it's not ever in competition with the goal for sitting down and playing. You know what I mean?
I'm offended.
Well, but I think I understand what you're saying, right? And it's like, and I think that for me, I take that to the point of, and this has gotten less and less over time, which is why I like the guys at Critical Role. I like those folks. I think that they really actually think about not just their community, but the gaming community in general. And, they got a good heart, and they have a really good idea of how to get people to pay attention to having that heart.
Yeah.
So way before, there was a lot of people going, oh, if it's not like this podcast that I watched, then I'm not really doing the thing. And they go play with friends, and they're like, well, where are all the figures?
Why can't you? Why don't you have 15 different accents?
Why don't you give me $1 million and I'll do that?
Right, exactly.
And that's the thing. It's I think over time people have really come to understand that is the case, and we're not all playing the same role-playing game together. Whether we're playing the same system or not, or whether we're playing the same module, whether we're different things, we don't all play things the same way, and that's actually great.
Yeah.
Do that.
Yeah.
And they're really behind that also.
Yes.
And so that's what worries me with what you're talking about. But to see now I play in a game at home, I've got a second game with another person at their home. I stream every other Monday, and we do it on Discord and OBS with virtual with VTube assets of our characters, right?
Yeah.
I also I've this past Friday played the new Alien game, which is really awesome. The new game for Alien.
Uh-huh.
But I really honestly forget who put it out.
Okay.
But oh my goodness. Is it like just playing through the movies?
Yeah.
It's so good. I played with some friends. We got together on Discord. Some of us were Chicago. Some of us were in San Diego. Some of us were here in Indiana, different places. Just us chilling, roll 20 in that. And it was super fun. So whatever you play, however you play, you're not doing it wrong, right? And you don't have to do it like someone else.
Right.
And I really think from the experience of a player to now sort of it's almost a renaissance of what's happening in the gaming world from this, of people just going, okay, well, we're not going to do that. We're not okay with that. Because of the public outcry, you rescinded a lot of that. And these other companies who are already established, we're going to do new and our own things.
Yes.
To just put more out there in the world for people to enjoy.
So it's Free League Publishing. I just double checked that.
Okay.
So the reason, what I find interesting about that is Free League is also the same people that did the One Ring and just recently did the Lord of the Rings role playing game under 5th edition.
Gotcha.
Because they got a lot of different options out there. So I love that. An interesting twist here is based off everything you just said. It's actually going to lean back kind of to our wrestling podcast now as well, because for a decade, WWE was the only game in town after they squashed all their major competitors. And what drew a lot of interest to All Elite Wrestling 4 years ago, because they just had their fourth Double or Nothing, which would have been their 4th anniversary effectively as a actual acting wrestling product. They brought competition. Now, is it the competition you like? It may not be, but because of it, it has forced the other companies, WWE, Impact, New Japan, all these guys, forced them to now step up their game because somebody else has proven they can do it on the same level. And that's why Paizo's first edition of Pathfinder was so successful.
Yes.
Because they took what was a great system in 3.5 and managed to make it better. And the reason why second edition
in competition with 4th edition.
Correct.
Yes.
Because 4th edition was veered off so much from what it was.
It wasn't D&D.
So
it was WoW.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, board game edition, as we joke too.
Right.
But the similar things are starting to happen here as well. So I got coworkers that prefer Call of Cthulhu to any other role-playing system that's out there. It's very good.
The Chaosium one?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
They love it.
It's really good.
It's because of the competition that, as is like Paizo interjected, that people went, hey, we can do this better than him. Or you have the One Ring or Tales of the Valiant. But a lot of that competition in role-playing, because it's written material and artistic material, follow under copyright laws, and the open game license was supposed to be that thing that protected others. And when it stopped protecting, we needed a new license.
Yep.
And now that those new licenses exist, competition can exist.
Exactly.
And I am excited because I don't want to see Wizards fail. I want to see Wizards suffer for what they did. But if they fail, that means we lose competition and means everyone else suffers. I don't want to lose everyone, but I do want them to understand their mistakes.
I think that if they fail, we won't lose D&D, we won't lose that competition. Someone will pick up that license. Now, with that, like I said before, that's probably never going to happen. Right? Because they got a movie out, another one, which was actually good.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, dude, I
that's a fun
loved it
movie.
so much.
We didn't pay
I
for it
loved
because someone else had free tickets for us to use at
Sure.
AMC anytime. And no offense, the actors and everybody in it, great. Your production, great. It was awesome.
Yeah. The story is just
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
A really good representation of Forgotten Realms in a movie form.
Yes.
Cool to see the Harpers, all the different things.
Of
and
Easter eggs.
yeah, really cool. Really cool. Zastam, everything.
Yeah.
But does that mean that Wizards should get all the credit for that? Well, no. Those were those artists who took this thing that actually existed way from Lee Greenwood way before you people decided to come along and screw all that story up, and did something awesome with it.
Right.
So I want them to fail because they're not doing that that story, all that information justice. And they're definitely harming the memory of it, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't even think they've gotten new people into it themselves. I will look to the streamers who've streamed it,
Yeah.
Acquisitions Inc. and Critical Role.
Dimension 20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, those cats got new people into it, not Wizards.
Right. I would say that they were probably just the better known, easier to acquire
Yeah.
material.
Yeah.
But I agree with you 100%. I think that when you're debating on what kind of role play game you want to play, there's tons of them out there, right? There's Rules Light, there's crunchy sets, there's things like GURPS where you have like a central system, and then you have all of these different ways that you can apply that central system. There's all kinds of really cool things out there, and I think that Dungeons and Dragons, because of Gary Gygax's influence in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
And because of the Satanic Panic.
100%.
No doubt.
It's funny to me.
When it becomes taboo.
Yes. Well, and this kind of going into a little bit of what Josh was saying when he brought up wrestling, funny enough, there was a general manager. Well, he was kind of the CEO of WCW named Eric Bischoff.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Remember
Correct me
Bischoff?
if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he wrote a book called "Controversy Creates Cash."
Yeah.
And it was all about how you can take. I mean, it was partly like autobiographical, but it was also about like the success story of how when you have a brand and you're able to create that controversy, how it lifts. What is a rising tide lifts all boats?
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of thing. So when you have something like, to your credit, I agree that what Hasbro has done and what WotC has done with that brand has really kind of it's kind of tainted the taste of what the environment and culture of roleplay games has been since Dungeons and Dragons came to be.
Mm-hmm. It was a community.
Yes.
It's
and
always been a community.
I will say, though, that what is more evident than anything about exactly that was the recourse that happened.
Oh, certainly.
When that happened.
Certainly. Agreed.
I think that the people who are diehard Dungeons and Dragons is the only way players, they're always going to be there. Hasbro that brand is probably going to live on into, in memoriam for the role-playing scene. But if there's anything that we have been able to prove through all of this is that the environment and the culture of role-play gamers does not reflect the mentality of the corporate people who own the brand.
Not at all. They don't even know what that is.
Right, and
they don't have a clue.
That to me, that's the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Because you have people who are like, you know what, I'm not going to do? I'm not going to miss out on supporting these people who are independent producers by buying into a brand that doesn't want to support those people. So I'm going to deviate, and I'm either going to go right into whatever system they're built on, or I'm going to find another system that is slightly different but has a lot of the same mechanics and pretenses so that I can continue to buy things from Kobold Press that maybe apply to Second Ed Pathfinder. Or you know what? I've been wanting to run a sci-fi game, so I'm going to check out Starfinder. Like, those sorts of things to me are what are most impressive when we're talking about the culture of gaming.
Certainly.
And we're talking about the environment of gaming. And to your same credit, like, the idea that there is a brand out there with like Critical Role and I think a lot of the other ones that are maybe a little less known, Dimension 20, things like that, they're still on board with that sort of culture and mentality. But I think that like what Critical Role is doing with creating their D6 system, they're in the process of creating their Daggerheart RP, which I think is going to be a little bit more like a D20 sort of system or something that's a little bit heavier mechanically, which is going to be great. I think that, one thing that I've said about the culture and environment of gaming in the Indianapolis, Indiana area, and I know in our, in our lead-in to our show, one of the phrases that we coined early on was we're in the capital, the gaming capital of the world, right?
Some people in Germany might disagree with you.
That's fine. That's fine. They can disagree with me all they want.
In Las Vegas.
Yeah, well,
Apparently,
That's fine. They don't.
different
depends on what kind of gaming you're talking about, I guess.
We're the gaming capital of the world. Every capital is the gaming capital of the world, if that's what you want it to be, right? But the reason I bring that up is Indianapolis really is a thriving gaming community. It's insane to me. And outside of Gen Con, even, I think Gen Con has definitely propelled it and pushed it into like a huge gaming environment.
Well, Gen Con grew massively when it came here.
Yes.
Because it was, Lake Geneva couldn't really handle the numbers of attendance anymore.
Yes.
They were looking for a place. Indy made a good bid. And since then, the international community really can come here. There are hotels everywhere, and they always get filled. The convention center is gigantic, and there's always awesome stuff happening there during Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
So it has grown massively because the community, not because of corporate interest.
Exactly. And so my point to that is, in Indianapolis, there are several local game stores. Lots of friendly local game stores, some better than others. But one thing that I have always said is that if there is a game store that you go into and the environment is not there, the customer service is not there, you can always go to another store.
Yep.
There are 1.5 million McDonald's. If you don't like the McDonald's that you go and get your food to, there's another one about half a mile down the road. What is interesting is this is very much that same response.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like what you're doing. I don't want to invest in what you're doing. What you're doing is something that I feel like is corrupt or is taking advantage of somebody, to whatever extreme that is. Even if you're just like Josh and I, you're like, I love gaming, but I don't like that I have friends in the gaming world that are going to be negatively affected by what these people are doing. I'm not going to support that. I'm okay with that. That's not cool. So I think that, no matter where you are on that spectrum,
Certainly.
what's incredible and what we've been able to see really is that development of new relationships and new opportunities and things like that through just that.
Well, and that's kind of one of the things. Right now, I'm still, personally, I'm going to do everything I can to try and avoid buying directly through Wizards of the Coast. But the truth is that there are people we know and support that will continue to use the 5th edition rule set as a third-party publisher.
Certainly.
Which means I'm never not going to play 5th edition, even though it's not my preferred. But even Dragonlance, though it was done first party, I like Dragonlance. I got friends who are going to play Dragonlance, and my hope was that the Hickman Weiss group was going to be involved in Dragonlance, only to find out they weren't. Dumb.
Yeah, bad form. Again, bad form. A lot of expletives. And bad form.
However, Sky Raiders of Aberox, which was kickstarted by Hickman and his crew, is by Hickman and his crew. And though it is using 5th edition, reminder, Pathfinder Infinite is a thing. You can certainly make it available first and or 2nd edition.
100%.
Besides the fact, and that's something we're probably going to look at. I suspect we're going to look at Sky Raiders. We're going to try it out in 5th edition for a few times and frankly see how difficult it would be to make the adjustment. I don't want to mess too much with it. Switching between 5th and 2nd is not trivial, but it is certainly something. It's easier to go from 5th to 2nd than it is to go from 5th to 1st edition. I can say that because 5th edition and 3.5 don't mix at all. But I want to support those guys. Just Tales of the Valiant. I may jump on that with
that
Cobalt
looks
as well because I want Wizards to go, hey, we know you've created this baseline, but we think they're doing it better. I want to see that come out. And heck, if somebody came out with better stuff on the 2nd edition rule set, especially as it gets remastered and is all under the orc, and I'm like, this is better than what's going on in Galarian. I want to give this a shot. Then I would probably do the same. I just know that as the fire cooled down and we had nothing left but charred embers, a whole lot of new people came up and pushed that dumpster right off a cliff.
Yep. And made new things and forged a new way forward. Third-party publishers, indie publishers. it's been amazing to see. And a lot of friends I have and people I know and the things they talk about of what's coming out and what's possible and what they're getting into is it's just fantastic. And I'm very excited for Gen Con this year. Not only to go and experience it on the side of running games and speaking on panels, but to see my friends there and what they're doing and what they're producing and the creativity that goes on there. Like that's just gonna be really good year there.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted to bring up too is kind of what we're excited for in a lot of this. We talked a lot about like some of the things that are going to be really exciting and stuff like that. But on a personal level, and Jason, I thank you for bringing that up. Like on a personal level, I think something that I'm really excited for is to start exploring some of those other, as Josh put it, black hole of RP games that I have on my bookshelf. Because and I'll say another statement after I get done with this point, but I have a lot of fun, different experiences with role-playing games, whether it's Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons, World of Darkness, Mutants and Masterminds. There's so many really cool RP experiences that you can have out there.
Savage
so the
Lands.
Great thing is you never have to...
Savage Worlds.
Savage Worlds,
Yeah,
yep,
so good.
Savage Worlds, 7th Sea.
Yeah.
There's so many great things out there. You don't have to settle.
No.
You never have to settle. And you don't have to do what you hear everybody else telling you need to do. Your role-play game experience and your gaming experience in general should be something that you find fulfilling, that you have a passion for, that you are excited to explore. As I tell my kids all the time when it comes to games, you can't quit the game that you're in the middle of, but you don't ever have to play it again. If you don't like it, if it's not fun, if you're not getting the enjoyment that you were hoping out of it, you don't have to keep playing it. You do have to finish the game that you're in, but you don't have to keep playing it. And that can be as simple as, if you're in a role-play setting, you just say, hey, I'm not really fulfilled with my character. I'm not really fulfilled with this story arc. I had a conversation the other day with some friends who wanted me to jump in a game, and I just said, I can't because the content is not something that I want to promote personally.
Yeah.
I am in support of everything that you're doing, but personally, it's just a choice that I'm making for me because that's not going to be a fun game for me. Why do I want to spend 4 hours at a table if I'm not having fun?
And that's what really upset me for quite a few years about the whole 5th edition, but and not just Dungeons and Dragons, but also like 5th edition Vampire and just the games that were coming out were just wholly not creative and not fun.
Right.
And without community in mind, they were obvious cash grabs.
Yeah.
And it was everybody line up like lemmings and jump off the cliff with us because this is the only thing you're going to get. And that has, to me, never been the gaming community. And those companies and people didn't get that. They just saw dollar signs.
Yep.
So this analogy just hit me. I don't understand why it didn't click until just now. We are a gaming podcast. We've spent a lot of time talking about role-playing games and everything associated with that right now. But what just clicked with me was the video game industry
Oh, okay.
has been on a 7 to 10 year cycle for consoles.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm not even joking
Right?
you, Josh. I was literally getting ready to go into that.
I tell you, I'll say this. I don't play console games anymore.
Sure.
I got tired of being the same old thing over and over and over.
Here's the thing about that, though, and because a lot of people, the PlayStation 4, Xbox One generation got a lot of grief because they did mid-cycle refreshes. Of course, the Xbox One, and then there was the Xbox One S, and then there was the Xbox One X, or you had the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 4 Slim and the PlayStation 4 Pro. And though there were absolute cash grabs in that, there were also small technological leaps that happened from there to there, and they had good justification, and they didn't cause the price jumps to be unreasonable. Now, this new generation, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series, it's such a weird thing because the Series S is $300, but the PlayStation 5 digital is $400, and the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are $500. And are they really that big of a generational increase over the PlayStation 4 and 4 Pro? They absolutely are. But they're still $500, and they're better than most PCs you can buy at that age. However, They sit at that price right now, $500. You're going to get 1080p 60 if you're lucky.
True.
4K 30 is at least doable on these current systems.
True.
Anyways, but there's 7 to 10 year cycles with possible mid-system refreshes. Paizo is in their mid-cycle refresh.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
D&D is doing a mid-cycle refresh
Yep, 5.5.
in their 3rd or 4th year. Both systems are doing that right now. And
5e is a little older than 3 or 4.
is it 5 years old at this point?
I
'Cause
think it's more than
second
that.
edition was the year after that, I thought.
I don't know about
Pathfinder
Paizo,
second
but I'm
edition,
talking like 5e is like way more than
okay, maybe that is right. Gosh, this is
way
we're
more
old.
than
I'm not
5
okay
years
with this.
old.
But
But
anyways,
Paizo makes sense, yeah.
they're in their mid-cycle refresh. And the big news that came out here recently is Wizards is going to increase the price of all of the core rule books.
Yeah.
Which is insane because Paizo can put the Pathfinder second edition core rulebook out for $60 and you can play everything you want out of that game. If you want, do you have monsters? No, but you can create your own. Here's the stats on how to do it. But anyways, it's the mid-cycle refresh. They are catching on, and we've joked 4th edition was the video game edition and this and that, but why that correlation didn't just hit until right now? Sorry.
That's good.
Wow.
And what you said there made me think of something else too. Is that like I forgot that Hasbro WotC is upping their print book prices. Where, okay, yeah, print and everything has become more expensive. Whatever. They just seem to be doing a lot of things to shoot themselves in the foot, like the Pinkerton stunt. Oh, you haven't heard of this?
The what?
You didn't hear about that at all?
No.
Yeah, so they accidentally sent someone, I don't know, some magic, it's magic crap. A bunch of like really expensive magic cards I didn't mean to or whatever. Instead of just, I don't know, being normal people, because they value their cardboard way higher than it's actually worth, they sent Pinkertons to this person's house to get it from them. Maybe not house, but from this place.
Like federal agent
Like
type
the
people, right?
Pinkertons. I think the Pinkertons are private now, but yes, maybe they're not. But they hired the Pinkertons to go get magic cards, pieces of cardboard, because they were valued so high in their company's stock or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, that doesn't seem like a waste of money to you? Whose bright idea was that? Idiots.
Yeah.
Idiots run those things.
Yeah.
Whatever.
D&D 5e came out in 2012.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
January 2012.
That
And-
would explain why it's a new edition. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and they're just now getting around to 5.5.
11 years is a pretty long time. The comment that I was going to make on the video game scene was unlike a role-playing game, you know, when I think of like Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Fate, anything like that, it's a core rule system. Usually there are some, even if they're light, there are some campaign opportunities there, like with Pathfinder 2nd edition, it started out with some like Lost Omens themes or something along those lines where you could run some different themed things from just the core rule book. Of course, with the Player's Handbook and DMG and a Monster Manual, you can pretty much run anything from those materials. But what's so interesting is versus the video game and computer industry, video game systems, yes, they go on, you know, a 5 to 7 year refresh, or every 5 to 7 years we have a new console, and they do like a 3.5 year refresh or what have you. Those are sandbox playgrounds for any developer and designer to take advantage of to create whatever they want to play.
Within the parameters of the system.
Within the parameters of the system and what they can handle, right? You can't drive a street legal race car 250 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But
Well, I would say the PCs are more of that than the consoles, because it's a lot easier to develop for a PC.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are many more applications to put your game out there on and have people try it.
Josh
test
is
it.
going to disagree with you.
Yep,
Hear it in
because
his breathing.
it's a lot easier to develop for a Mac because every Mac is all the same. But a PC, just like it's not easy to develop for Android, is made up of thousands of, maybe even millions of combinations of hardware
Sure.
that are not going to put. That's why console developers they focus so much on consoles. Now, that said, this is a whole conversation for another episode. Stop releasing PC ports of console games that don't work.
Oh yeah, please.
How about you just develop for the PC, and it's going to be a whole lot easier to go back down to console because it's one SKU most of the time. But that's a conversation in itself. Role-playing games are like PC games, though, because every table is a different combination of parts.
Yeah.
Your role-playing system is going to have to fit within that box that is made up of millions of combinations. Versus the video game, they're telling a story, open world, sandbox, whatever, different types. That hardware is, you are a PlayStation player, it's got to work on this system. You at least have a lot more guardrails. Now, is that a conversation for another day? Should there be more guardrails put in to understand how role-playing development should happen? I don't think so, because it doesn't provide for creative freedom.
Agree.
But it's still, your comment is, it's easy. The aspect of it's easier to sell on PC, 100% agree.
Yeah.
It's not easier to develop for it.
You feel better?
I don't know. I'm when I'm thinking of like
Yeah.
big companies like EA and all those guys, like they're the ones you really hear about, though. You don't hear a whole lot of independent developers for consoles, where you do for PCs. And I think that's really what I was talking about.
Well, so independent developers, again, flock to consoles because a lot of times consoles give a better cut of the stores, because most of the stores on PCs, again, I wasn't expecting this conversation, but whatever. Most of the stores on PC are 30%. Most of the consoles are 30%, unless you're an independent developer. Like on Sony, I think it's 15% if you make less than $1 million on your game or something like that. And then after that point, it's a 30% cut because they're trying to help you get into the market.
Yeah.
And there's a big reason why Epic sued Microsoft and Google for Fortnite, because their whole business model is based off of microtransactions, and Microsoft and Google were taking 30% of the cut on every one of them. And like, this is our stuff that you're trying to take cut off of. It shouldn't be that much, and it's a thing, whatever. But independent developers are often using engines put out by the EA, like your Frostbite engines or your Unreal engine or
Havoc engine.
Havoc engine,
yeah,
all
yeah.
these different things, that are put out. So they're using those tools, and they've got to recoup those costs. Like, what if Unreal's like $15,000 base license plus X number per release game or something along those lines? I don't know. I'm totally making that number up.
Okay, I was like, bro, that is next level nerd right there, my friend.
Well, but to that idea, right? And we get into that whole conversation of like where D&D is going and VTTs and everything, and they're doing it mostly for PC. And they really want to get into that area. And the microtransaction thing, is that good or bad? I pay for a game. I want to play the game. I don't want to have to pay you 10 other times to get everything in the game. Just release your game at whatever you want it to be released at. Regardless, there are some issues there. And like, so Hasbro, WotC, are going that direction with Dungeons and Dragons. And that is a thing they've definitely stated they are doing, even specifically in the VTT market. That's really where they're going. Oh, you want your we got a standard fireball spell, what it looks like, right? But you want to color it in a different way, or you want a different skin, or you want to do this thing. Well, just keep paying us more and different money. And I get that that's how businesses work, and that's what we do. And we're in the technological age, and that seems to be the model for everything. That's all poop, in my opinion. Yeah. That's all poop. Please don't do that.
It is, if it's the only way to get that. When you made the statement of there's at least a generic fireball.
Yeah.
Cool. There's a different fireball. The thing is that microtransactions are no different than I want my car to be a different color.
Oh,
different than I want to
agree.
buy a green shirt.
I'd rather have a purple purse than a green purse.
We can talk about, we'll get into I don't want to get into that whole conversation about capitalism and how it's terrible. Unchecked capitalism is the Leviathan eating us all right now. We're seeing that, but that's a completely different conversation. It has nothing to do with a gaming podcast.
What have you done?
but may like influence the reason why I think certain things, and am very much concerned about some things that I see in a community that I love, and companies that are not about the community.
Right.
I don't love that.
Right. And to that same effect, you know, and you had brought this up too, companies like A Critical Role, where it's like not only are they proving out through the gaming industry where their heart is, but even outside of that, they're doing things to help cultivate and encourage and build up a community of people, whether it be with their Operation Supply Drop partnership or tons of things that they do with like education and stuff like that, and marginalized groups and stuff. It's they do really cool things, and obviously it's not just
I legit
them.
have goosebumps. Like, they're like I can't.
Well, and it's not, you know, it's not
they're
just
great.
necessarily them. You have like
Absolutely.
you have tons of really awesome people who are very philanthropic with their time and things like that. But I think that you know, overall, I think that what we're doing is really just celebrating that, you know, there's a huge freedom of choice out there when it comes to what sort of game you want to play, what sort of environment you want to play. The only comment I was going to make about something that you had said earlier about like the books and stuff like that, I think that honestly, your book material is the least of your cost. Because you buy a Dungeon Master's Guide or you buy a core rule book, and that's literally the only core rule book you have to buy for the next whatever until they do an update or what have you. But even a lot of times, they'll bring out, Paizo's been really good about this, they'll bring out a rules errata so that you can take what you already have and just make sure you update it without having to go through the rigors of buying a whole new $60 book. If that's what you want to do, go for it. If that's not what you want to do, then they at least help you out with that so that you can stay current with what they're doing. So that if you wanted to play organized play or something like that, it's available to you.
And a lot of the costs in those books, they come from the developers, the writers, the artists, and like good.
Yes.
Pay those people.
Right.
Pay them. They're the ones making this awesome.
Right.
When you don't pay good writers, you get what you get.
You get crap. You get crap. Yeah. You get crap. Well, that was a passionate hour-long conversation. I wasn't sure that the three of us were going to be really good at carrying on an hour-long conversation, but I guess I was wrong.
I can carry on a conversation forever.
You're a liar, Don.
well-
Stop lying to the audience.
No, it's all right.
Whether anyone
All
wants
right.
to hear it or not.
That's it. That's it.
I don't know.
That's it. All right. So on episode 241, we established that darkness wins.
Yep.
Unless you have a cat.
Yeah.
You have a cat. And on episode 242 of the Established Facts, our A Whole New World episode, we have established that this is evidence of how the brightest and hottest dumpster fire can forge new roads to our passions.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyhow, thank you guys so much for joining us on episode 242 of The Established Facts. We love you all, and we will check you later.
See ya.
Deuces.
Bye.